Commander Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Taeguk, staring at the stars beyond the window. His crew had been traveling for 3 months, mapping systems that no human had ever seen before. Earth had finally mastered faster-than-light travel, and now humanity was reaching into the cosmos with curious hands. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," Sora called out from the engineering station. She was the best engineer Earth had ever produced, and if she said something was strange, Ji-hoon paid attention. "It's a signal. Sounds like a distress call." Ji-hoon walked over to her console and looked at the readings. The signal was weak, fading in and out like a dying heartbeat. "Where is it coming from?" "About 2 million kilometers from here. There's debris scattered across that sector. Looks like someone had a very bad day." Sora pulled up a visual on the main screen. Twisted metal floated in the darkness, glowing faintly from internal fires that were slowly dying in the vacuum of space. Doyun, the tactical officer, frowned at his station. "Commander, protocol says we should report this to Earth and wait for instructions. We don't know what's out here." "Someone is dying out there," Ji-hoon said quietly. "We came to explore, to learn, to meet others. Well, here's our chance. Prepare a rescue shuttle." Hana, the ship's xenobiologist, was already grabbing her medical kit. "I'm coming with you, Commander. If there are survivors, they'll need help." The shuttle cut through space toward the wreckage. As they got closer, Ji-hoon could see that the destroyed ship had been massive. Whatever had attacked it had been thorough. Holes the size of buses punctured the hull, and entire sections were simply gone. "Life signs faint but present," Hana reported, scanning with her equipment. "One survivor, maybe more. They're in what looks like an escape pod attached to the main wreckage." They docked with the damaged vessel, and Ji-hoon led the way through twisted corridors that groaned and shifted around them. The air was toxic, so they kept their helmets sealed. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows on walls covered in symbols they couldn't read. Finally, they reached the escape pod. Inside, they found him. The alien was tall, with gray skin and 4 arms, lying in a pool of dark blue blood. His eyes flickered open when they entered, and he tried to speak. The words were alien, incomprehensible, but the meaning was clear in his fading gaze. Fear, warning. Hana immediately began working to stabilize him, but she shook her head. "His biology is completely different. I don't know what I'm doing. I can stop the bleeding, but beyond that..." The alien reached into his uniform with a shaking hand and pulled out several small chips. He pressed them into Ji-hoon's palm, then grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. His mouth moved, forming words that the universal translator struggled to process. "Hide. They come. Soft species. Never survive. First contact." Then his grip loosened and he was gone. They brought the body back to the Taeguk along with the data chips. Sora worked through the night to decode them, while Hana tried to learn what she could from examining the alien's remains. Ji-hoon stood in his quarters, staring at the chips in his hand, wondering what they had stumbled into. "Commander, you need to see this." Sora's voice came over the comm, tight with fear. Right now, the entire crew gathered in the briefing room. Sora projected the decoded data onto the main screen, and what they saw made Ji-hoon's blood run cold. Star maps showing thousands of worlds, lists of species, some marked with green symbols, many marked with red. Earth wasn't on the maps yet, but the pattern was clear. The green species had submitted. The red ones had been destroyed. "This is the Dominion Empire," Sora explained, her voice shaking slightly. "They've ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They have a very simple policy for new species they discover. Submit to their rule completely or they wipe you out. According to this data, they've encountered over 3,000 intelligent species. About half submitted. The other half fought back." "And the ones who fought back?" Doyun asked, though the answer was obvious from the red marks on the map. "Gone. All of them. The Dominion doesn't negotiate. They don't compromise. You kneel or you die." Hana pulled up another file. "The alien we found was a diplomat named Velkesh. He was traveling to negotiate with a neutral species when his ship was attacked. But here's the problem. His ship's logs show our location. They know where Earth is." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. "How long do we have?" Ji-hoon asked. Sora checked the data. "Their scout ships are fast. If they found the wreckage and recovered the navigation data, they could reach Earth in weeks. Maybe days." "Set course for home," Ji-hoon ordered. "Maximum speed. We need to warn everyone." The journey back felt much longer than the journey out. Every member of the crew knew what was coming. They had seen the fate of species who resisted the Dominion. Entire civilizations reduced to nothing but red marks on a map. When the Taeguk finally reached Earth, Ji-hun transmitted everything they had learned directly to the United Defense Forces. Within hours, he was standing before Fleet Commander Taeyang, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "It's confirmed," Taeyang said grimly. "We've detected unknown ships at the edge of our solar system. They're just watching us for now, but we know what comes next." As if summoned by his words, every screen in the command center suddenly activated. An alien face appeared, reptilian features twisted into what might have been contempt. When he spoke, the translation software rendered his words in cold, mechanical tones. "Primitive species of the third planet, I am High Chancellor Torvex of the Dominion Empire. Your world has been discovered. Your technology has been assessed. Your military capability has been measured. You are found to be inferior in all ways. You have 30 of your days to make your choice. Submit to imperial rule and serve the Dominion, or resist and face complete extermination. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. Choose wisely." The screens went dark. Taeyang stood up slowly, his face hard as stone. "Send a message to every nation on Earth. Emergency meeting of the United Council in 2 hours. Tell them we have 30 days to prepare for war. They have thousands of ships," someone said quietly. "They've destroyed civilizations more advanced than ours. How can we possibly fight them?" Taeyang looked at the darkened screens where the alien's face had been. "I don't know. But I know this. Humanity didn't crawl out of the caves and survive ice ages and plagues and world wars just to kneel before some tyrant from the stars. If they want Earth, they're going to have to take it. And we're going to make them pay for every inch." Ji-hun felt something settle in his chest. Fear, yes, but also determination. Humanity had always been good at one thing: surviving against impossible odds. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The 30-day countdown had begun. High Chancellor Torvex sat in his command chair aboard the massive warship Infinite Dominion, watching the primitive blue planet rotate slowly below. He had done this same routine 300 times before with 300 different species. The pattern was always the same. First, they would panic. Then they would argue among themselves. Some would want to surrender immediately. Others would make brave speeches about resistance. Finally, reality would sink in and they would kneel. "Status report," he commanded. His second officer, a 4-armed Krellian named Vorketh, consulted his displays. "The humans are mobilizing their military forces. Primitive chemical rockets, basic energy weapons, simple nuclear devices. Nothing that poses a threat to our shields. Intelligence estimates their entire fleet could be destroyed in less than 4 hours. And their response to our ultimatum? They have requested more time to discuss terms." Torvex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Of course they have. They all do. Very well. We will allow them to waste their time. It makes no difference. Have our forces assembled? 500 warships are in position. Ground forces are ready for deployment. The siege equipment has been prepared." Vorketh paused. "High Chancellor, this seems like excessive force for such a primitive species. We could conquer them with 1/10 of this fleet." "Overwhelming force prevents prolonged resistance," Torvex replied. "We break them immediately, completely. They must understand that defiance is not merely futile but unthinkable. The Dominion has ruled for 5,000 years because we do not show weakness. Ever." Below, on Earth, the situation was anything but orderly. Fleet Commander Taeyang stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing defensive positions across the planet. Every nation on Earth had contributed ships, weapons, and soldiers. Old enemies were working together. It was the most unified humanity had ever been, and it still wasn't enough. "We have 200 warships," Minji reported. She was the strategic director, and her job was to figure out how to win an unwinnable war. "The Dominion has 500, and each of their ships is more advanced than our best vessels. They have shields that can shrug off our strongest weapons. Their weapons can punch through our armor like paper. Then we don't fight them head-on," Taeyang said. "What do we have that they don't?" Minji pulled up data on past Dominion conquests. Every species they faced fought honorably. Fleet against fleet, formation against formation. They lost because they played by the Dominion's rules. "So we don't play by their rules," Doyen said. He had been promoted to strategic operations after the Taeguk's return. "We fight dirty. We use every trick we've learned from 10,000 years of human warfare. Sora was already working on retrofitting civilian ships with weapons. Mining vessels became missile platforms. Transport ships became carriers for small attack craft. Orbital stations were armed with every weapon Earth could manufacture. It wouldn't be enough, but it would make the Dominion bleed. The 30 days passed too quickly. When Torvex's fleet descended toward Earth, he expected to see white flags and surrender broadcasts. Instead, he saw weapons powering up and ships moving into attack positions. "The humans are not yielding," Vorketh reported with surprise. "They appear to be preparing to fight." "Foolish creatures," Torvex growled. "Open fire. Target their military installations first. Show them the cost of defiance." The battle began badly for Earth. Dominion warships opened fire with energy weapons that tore through human shields like they weren't there. Ships exploded, their crews dying before they could even respond. Orbital stations were reduced to debris. For the first 2 hours, it looked like the massacre everyone had predicted. Then humanity started fighting back. Pilot Hajun led a squadron of experimental fighters toward the Dominion fleet. His ships were smaller, faster, and more maneuverable than anything the aliens had faced before. While the Dominion expected honorable combat, Hajun taught them a lesson that humans had learned long ago. In war, honor gets you killed. His fighters didn't engage directly. They fired missiles and then ran, drawing the larger Dominion ships into pursuit. When the enemy followed, they flew into debris fields and asteroid clusters where the massive alien ships couldn't maneuver. Some Dominion vessels crashed into asteroids. Others were caught in crossfire from their own ships. "What are they doing?" Torvex demanded, watching his orderly battle dissolve into chaos. "Why won't they fight properly?" Sora activated her surprise. The mining ships that had been positioned throughout the system suddenly accelerated, hauling massive asteroids behind them. They released their cargo on collision courses with Dominion ships. The aliens could destroy the asteroids, but the debris kept coming, and eventually something got through. One Dominion warship took a piece of rock the size of a building straight into its engine section. The ship didn't explode dramatically like in movies. It just went dark, tumbling through space with no power. On the ground, the Dominion made their first attempt at landing troops. General Krauth commanded 100,000 soldiers, the finest warriors in the Empire. They had conquered worlds. They had crushed armies. Humans, he was certain, would break like all the others. His forces landed on the Korean peninsula expecting quick victory. Instead, they found Sergeant Hyun and the United Earth Ground Forces waiting. Krauth had never fought guerrilla warfare before. The Dominion way of war was straightforward. Land your forces, advance in formation, crush the enemy with superior firepower and discipline. It had worked for thousands of years, but humans didn't fight that way. Hyun's forces attacked from buildings, from tunnels, from concealed positions. They would fire a few shots and then disappear before the Dominion could respond. They used traps, ambushes, and hit-and-run tactics. Every street was contested. Every building was a fortress. Every alley could hide death. The Dominion soldiers were stronger and better armed, but they were fighting an enemy they couldn't see and couldn't pin down. When they advanced, they were attacked from behind. When they tried to secure buildings, explosives would detonate. When they thought an area was clear, gunfire would erupt from underground tunnels. After 1 week of fighting, Krauth had lost 60,000 soldiers. He had advanced less than 10 kilometers. The humans had lost more, but they kept fighting. They wouldn't surrender. They wouldn't break. "These creatures are insane," Krauth screamed into his communicator. "They fight to the death over every piece of ground. They attack even when surrounded. They use tactics I've never seen." Torvex was having similar problems in space. His fleet had destroyed most of Earth's military vessels, but the cost had been horrifying. He had lost 80 ships to these primitives. 80 ships, some to surprise attacks, some to suicide runs, some to tactics so unconventional he hadn't known how to counter them. And the humans had activated something new. Scientist Yunji had spent the 30 days studying Dominion technology from Velkesh's ship. She couldn't match their weapons, but she found a weakness. The Dominion shields were powerful but relied on specific frequencies. She developed electromagnetic pulse weapons tuned to those frequencies. When Earth's remaining ships fired these new weapons, Dominion shields flickered and failed. Suddenly their ships were vulnerable. Suddenly the battle was no longer one-sided. Torvex stared at his casualty reports in disbelief. In 500 conquests, he had never lost more than 10 ships. Now he had lost 80, and the humans showed no sign of stopping. He opened a channel to the Dominion capital, something he had never needed to do before. "I require reinforcements," he said, the words bitter in his mouth. "Send additional fleets. These humans are not like other species. They do not fight with honor. They do not accept defeat. They are," he struggled to find the right word, "relentless." On Earth, Taeyang surveyed the damage. Millions were dead. Cities were burning. Half his fleet was destroyed. But the Dominion had been stopped. They controlled orbit, but they couldn't land without terrible losses. The war had become a grinding stalemate. Minji approached him with new intelligence. "Sir, we've intercepted Dominion communications. They're requesting reinforcements. That means we hurt them. That means they didn't expect this." Taeyang nodded slowly. "Get this message out to every free species in the galaxy. Tell them humanity is fighting the Dominion. Tell them we're still standing. Tell them that resistance is possible." For the first time in 5,000 years, the Galactic Dominion had met a species that wouldn't kneel, and the galaxy was watching. 6 months into the war, the galaxy was watching with growing fascination. Commander Ji-hoon stood before the Vergan Collective Council, a gathering of 12 species who had submitted to the Dominion centuries ago. They lived in comfortable servitude, paying tribute but keeping their autonomy. They had learned not to resist. "Why have you come here, human?" the council speaker asked. She was a Vergan, her crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. "The Dominion permits us neutrality, but speaking with you endangers that arrangement." Ji-hoon activated a holographic display. Battle footage appeared, showing human fighters weaving through Dominion formations. Ground troops refusing to surrender even when surrounded. Civilians building weapons in underground factories. "I came to show you that resistance is possible," Ji-hoon said simply. "For 6 months, Earth has fought the Dominion Empire. We've lost millions. Our cities are scarred. But we're still free, still fighting, still standing." "You're losing," another council member pointed out. "Slowly, painfully, but losing nonetheless. The Dominion has unlimited resources. You do not." "We're learning," Ji-hoon countered. "Every day we survive, we get better at fighting them. Every battle teaches us something new. 6 months ago, we'd never fought in space. Now we're destroying ships that are centuries more advanced than ours." He pulled up more footage, a Dominion warship exploding as human fighters used its own weapons against it, ground troops using captured alien equipment, scientists reverse engineering Dominion technology. "They told you resistance was impossible," Ji-hoon continued. "They told us the same thing. They were wrong. The only question is, how long will you keep believing them?" The council exchanged glances but said nothing. Ji-hoon hadn't expected immediate results. Diplomat Nari, who had accompanied him, whispered that planting seeds was enough for now. If those seeds grew into rebellion, that would come later. Back on Earth, Sora was working on something that could change everything. The engineering bay had become her second home. Around her, teams of human and allied scientists worked on dozens of projects simultaneously. They had studied every piece of Dominion technology they could capture. They had learned, adapted, and improved. "Show me the test results," Sora demanded, staring at a prototype weapon that looked like it shouldn't exist. "Railgun fires at 0.2% light speed," her assistant reported. "The projectiles use captured Dominion guidance systems, but we've modified them to be unpredictable. They can change course mid-flight. The Dominion targeting computers can't track them properly," Sora smiled. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible, but necessity was pushing human innovation into overdrive. They were learning faster than any species the Dominion had encountered. And the nanite swarms? Ready for field testing. We load them into standard missiles. When the missile detonates near a Dominion ship, the nanites spread out and start disassembling the hull. Takes about 20 minutes to cripple a warship. Perfect. Get them into production immediately. Strategic Director Minji was planning something audacious. She had been studying 6 months of combat data, looking for patterns in Dominion tactics. She found their weakness. They were predictable. They used the same formations, the same strategies, the same approach they'd used for thousands of years. "They think they're superior," Minji explained to Fleet Commander Taeyang. "So they don't adapt. They assume their technology and numbers will win eventually. That's their mistake." "What are you suggesting?" Taeyang asked. "A counteroffensive. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and hit them where they don't expect it." She pulled up a tactical display. Their occupation fleet is spread across our solar system. They have overwhelming force, but it's dispersed. If we concentrate all our strength on one point, we can break through. That would leave Earth vulnerable. Earth is already vulnerable. We're losing this war of attrition. Our only chance is to show them we can hurt them badly enough that continuing the war becomes too costly. Taeyang studied the plan. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but Minji was right. Playing defense would only delay the inevitable. Do it, he decided. Coordinate with all forces. We attack in 72 hours. The offensive began with pilot Hajun leading 300 fighters toward the Dominion fleet's staging area near Jupiter. It was the largest human attack since the war began. The Dominion detected them coming and moved to intercept with confident formations. They flew straight into Sora's trap. The human fighters scattered just before contact, and hundreds of missiles streaked past them toward the Dominion ships. But these weren't normal missiles. When they detonated, they released electromagnetic pulses tuned specifically to Dominion shield frequencies. Shields flickered and died across the enemy fleet. Now, Hajun shouted into the comm. All ships fire everything. The real attack came from behind. Human warships had been hiding in Jupiter's radiation bands, masked from Dominion sensors. They emerged firing the new railguns, sending hypervelocity projectiles into unshielded Dominion vessels. The battle was savage. Dominion ships returned fire desperately, destroying dozens of human vessels. But for every human ship that fell, 2 Dominion ships were crippled or destroyed. The aliens had never faced an attack like this, coordinated, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless. High Chancellor Torvex watched his fleet fall apart and felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: fear. All ships, fall back to defensive positions, he ordered. Deploy countermeasures. Find their command ship and destroy it. But there was no single command ship. Humans had learned from watching Dominion tactics. Every vessel operated independently, communicating through quantum channels that couldn't be jammed. Cut off one ship and the others kept fighting. It was chaos to the orderly Dominion mind, but it was how humans had fought for millennia. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 200 Dominion warships had been destroyed or disabled. The human fleet lost half its strength, but they had achieved something remarkable. They had won. Torvex stared at the casualty reports in his command center. Over 300 ships lost in 6 months. Over 2 million soldiers dead. Resources were being drained at an alarming rate. Other subjugated species were watching, learning, beginning to hope. Worse, intercepted communications showed that 6 species in the outer sectors had stopped paying tribute. They were in open rebellion. They had seen humans fighting and decided to try the same. Contact the Emperor, Torvex ordered quietly. Tell him the situation has become complicated. On Earth, Fleet Commander Taeyang did something the Dominion never expected. They had captured High Chancellor Torvex when his damaged ship was boarded during the battle. Standard procedure would be execution or imprisonment. Instead, Taeyang had him brought to the surface under a flag of truce. They met in the ruins of Seoul, surrounded by buildings that had been shattered by Dominion bombardment. Torvex looked at the destruction and expected to see defeat in the human's eyes. Instead, he saw determination. "I'm sending you back to your emperor," Taeyang said. Torvex stared at him. "Why?" "Because I want you to deliver a message. Tell your emperor that humanity offers peace. Not surrender, peace. Tell him that every day this war continues, we get stronger. We learn more. We become more dangerous. The Dominion does not negotiate with primitives. Then tell him this." Taeyang gestured to the ruins around them. "We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We've destroyed our own civilizations dozens of times and rebuilt them. We know 1,000 ways to kill. We know 1,000,000 ways to make war. We've perfected the art of conflict because we've never known anything else. Your empire conquered through superior technology. We conquered our world through pure stubbornness and refusal to die." He stepped closer to Torvex. "You can keep sending fleets. We'll keep destroying them. You can keep landing troops. We'll keep bleeding them in ways you've never imagined. Or you can end this war before we teach every other species in the galaxy how to fight like we do. Because that's what's happening. We've already shared our tactical data with 50 species. They're learning. They're rebelling. Your empire is 5,000 years old. How much longer do you think it will last if everyone decides to fight back at once? Torvex was returned to his flagship in silence. As his ship left Earth's orbit, he watched the scarred planet below. Humanity should have been broken by now. Every projection, every analysis, every historical precedent said they should have surrendered months ago. But they hadn't, and now the galaxy knew it was possible to resist. In a bunker beneath the ruins of Sol, Ji-hoon met with representatives from 3 species who had traveled in secret. The Vergans had sent an observer. 2 species from the outer sectors wanted to know how humans had survived. "Teach us," they said. "Teach us how to fight." Ji-hoon looked at Nari, who nodded. This was how empires fell. Not in a single battle, but in 1,000 small rebellions, each learning from the others. "We'll teach you," Ji-hoon agreed. "But understand this, it won't be easy. You'll lose people. Your worlds will be damaged, but you'll be free. Is that worth the cost?" They all answered yes. The galaxy was changing. The Dominion had stood unchallenged for 5,000 years. But humanity had shown that challenge was possible. And across thousands of worlds, species that had lived in fear for generations were beginning to hope. Emperor Krexthor of the Dominion Empire had ruled for 300 years. In that time, he had overseen the conquest of 200 worlds. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed fleets, and built an empire that seemed eternal. Now, for the first time in his long life, he felt the cold touch of uncertainty. 800 ships, he said, staring at the casualty reports. "In 1 year, we have lost 800 ships to a single primitive species. Explain this." His council chamber held the finest military minds in the Empire. None of them had an answer that satisfied him. "The humans fight without honor," General Vorketh said. "They use deception, unpredictable tactics, and asymmetric warfare. They turn our own technology against us. They refuse to accept defeat even when surrounded." "Then we will teach them what defeat looks like," the Emperor growled. "Deploy the Crimson Legion. If conventional forces cannot break these creatures, we will use our finest warriors." A ripple of surprise went through the council. The Crimson Legion was the Empire's most elite force. 50,000 augmented soldiers who had never lost a battle in 300 years. They were stronger, faster, and more lethal than any normal warrior. They were unleashed only when complete annihilation was required. "War Master Torkesh will lead them personally," Krexthor continued. "He will land on Earth and crush the human resistance. No mercy, no prisoners. When he is finished, humanity will serve as an example to every species in the galaxy of what happens when you defy the Dominion." On Earth, Sergeant Hyun was teaching a very different kind of warfare. The underground training facility held soldiers from 6 different alien species who had rebelled against the Dominion. They came to learn human tactics, and Hyun was their instructor. "Your species fought the Dominion with honor," Hyun told a group of Vergan warriors. "You used formations, proper battle doctrine, and conventional tactics. You lost. You know why you lost?" The Vergans looked uncomfortable but didn't answer. "Because the Dominion has better technology, more ships, and more soldiers. In a fair fight, you can't win. So don't fight fair." Hyun pulled up tactical displays. Humans learned this lesson 10,000 years ago. When you're outmatched, you change the rules. You fight in cities where their big ships can't help. You attack supply lines. You make them scared to patrol at night. You turn their own people against them. You make victory so costly that surrender looks appealing. He showed them footage from the Korean Peninsula campaign. Dominion troops, vastly superior in equipment and training, being bled dry by guerrilla tactics. Ambushes from underground tunnels. Booby traps in abandoned buildings. Civilians reporting troop movements to resistance fighters. "This is how you win when you can't win," Hyun said. "You make them pay for every victory. You make them question whether conquering your world is worth the cost. You make them afraid." The alien warriors watched with growing understanding. This was a completely different philosophy of war than anything they had learned. It felt wrong to their ordered military minds, but it also felt effective. Across the galaxy, 30 species had declared independence from the Dominion. Most would be crushed quickly, but some were following human advice. They were fighting smart instead of honorably, and it was working. Then the Crimson Legion arrived. War Master Torkesh stood on the command deck of his assault ship, looking down at Earth. He had fought for 200 years and conquered 40 worlds. He viewed humans the way a human might view an annoying insect, irritating but ultimately insignificant. "We will make landfall in Tokyo," he announced to his warriors. "The humans have fortified this city heavily. They expect it to slow us down. We will show them that nothing can slow the Crimson Legion. We will take the city in 3 days and kill every defender. No survivors, no mercy. The Legion descended on Tokyo like a crimson meteor. The first day went according to plan. Legion warriors stormed through defensive positions that would have stopped normal troops. Their augmented bodies shrugged off bullets. Their advanced armor absorbed energy weapons. They moved with terrifying speed and precision. Then they reached the city center and everything changed. Scientist Yunji had spent months studying Dominion biology from samples taken from dead soldiers. She had found weaknesses. The Crimson Legion's augmentations made them stronger, but also more vulnerable to specific chemical compounds. She had weaponized pheromones that triggered aggressive responses, making Legion soldiers attack each other. She had developed sonic weapons, tuned to frequencies that disrupted their enhanced nervous systems. The Legion warriors suddenly found themselves fighting enemies they couldn't see and threats they couldn't understand. The very city turned against them. Commander Doyen had coordinated with Tokyo's civilian population. Every building was a sensor post. Every citizen was an informant. The Crimson Legion couldn't move without humans knowing exactly where they were. Precision strikes hit them from unexpected angles. Underground tunnels allowed human forces to appear and disappear like ghosts. Pilot Hajun led airstrikes that used the city's tall buildings for cover. Legion anti-aircraft systems were designed for open warfare, not urban combat against small, agile craft that popped up between skyscrapers. War Master Torkesh had never experienced anything like it. His warriors were dying in alleys and sewers in collapsed buildings. They were being picked off one by an enemy that refused to face them in open combat. These humans have no honor. He raged over the comm. They hide like cowards. They fight to win, one of his officers responded grimly. And they're winning. After 30 days of brutal urban combat, Torkesh was forced to do something the Crimson Legion had never done before. He retreated. His force had lost 35,000 warriors and Tokyo still stood. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Crimson Legion had been defeated. The Dominion's most elite force had been broken by primitive humans using tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Species that had served the Dominion for centuries began to wonder, if humans could do it, why couldn't they? Rebellions erupted on 100 worlds. The Dominion found itself fighting a war on 100 fronts simultaneously. Each rebellion used tactics learned from humanity. They attacked supply lines. They fought in cities. They used captured technology against its makers. They turned the Dominion's orderly approach to war into a nightmare of chaos and unpredictability. Commander Ji-hoon and diplomat Nari traveled from world to world, coordinating what was becoming known as the Free Worlds Alliance. It wasn't an army in any traditional sense. It was a network of rebellions, each supporting the others, each learning from humanity's example. The Dominion is collapsing, Nari reported during a strategy meeting on Earth. They can't fight everywhere at once. They're spreading their forces thin, trying to maintain control. Every world they lose makes them weaker. Fleet Commander Taeyang studied the galactic map. The Dominion still controlled the core worlds, still had vast resources, still commanded millions of soldiers. But the Empire was wounded and bleeding from 1,000 cuts. Then we strike at the heart, Taeyang decided. We take the war to their homeworld. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what he was suggesting. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of audacious plan that humans specialized in. Their home fleet has 10,000 ships, Minji pointed out. We have 2,000 ships in the entire Free Worlds Alliance. The casualties would be catastrophic. So were the casualties at Tokyo, Taeyang replied. So were the casualties everywhere else we've fought. But we keep winning because we're willing to pay costs that the Dominion can't imagine. They think they're fighting for control. We're fighting for freedom. Those aren't the same thing. Sora began calculating what would be needed. We'll need every ship, every weapon, and every trick we've developed. Even then, the odds are maybe 1 in 5 that we succeed. 1 in 5 is better than 0, Hajun said. And it's better odds than we had a year ago when they first arrived. Sergeant Hune stood up. If we're doing this, we do it properly. We don't fight their fleet head-on. We cut their supply lines, hit their infrastructure, and turn their own defenses against them. We make them defend so many targets that they can't defend any of them properly. Plans began to form. It would be the largest combined operation in the history of the Free Worlds Alliance. 2,000 ships from 50 species all fighting together, all using tactics that the Dominion had never imagined. Emperor Krexthor received the intelligence reports with growing horror. The humans weren't retreating to defend Earth. They were gathering a fleet. They were preparing to attack the Dominion homeworld itself. "This is impossible," he said. "They wouldn't dare. No species has ever attacked Krexmore Prime. Our defenses are impenetrable. The humans don't seem to care about what's possible," his advisor said quietly. "They seem to care about what needs to be done." Deep in the planning rooms beneath ruined Sol, Taeyang looked at the assembled representatives from the Free Worlds Alliance. They were species that had been enemies for centuries, now working together because humanity had shown them that change was possible. "We're going to attack the heart of an empire that has ruled for 5,000 years, Taeyang said. "Most of us won't survive, but our children will be free. That's worth dying for." The Free Worlds Alliance fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Krexmore system, like a swarm of angry hornets, 2,000 ships from 50 different species, all united by a single purpose: ending the Dominion's reign of terror. Fleet Commander Taeyang stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching the Dominion home fleet respond to their arrival. 10,000 warships began moving into defensive formations around the capital world. It was the most powerful concentration of military force in the known galaxy. "All ships, this is Taeyang. Today we face impossible odds. The Dominion expects us to be intimidated by their numbers. They expect us to fight them honorably and lose. We will do neither. Remember your training. Trust your instincts. And above all, fight for your freedom." Taeyang out. Strategic Director Minji activated the battle plan. It was complex, chaotic, and relied on 3 simultaneous strikes that would keep the Dominion off balance. "Phase 1 begins now," she announced. Pilot Hajun led the first wave, 500 fighters and bombers that streaked toward the Dominion fleet. The aliens moved to intercept them with overwhelming force, committing 3,000 ships to crush what looked like the main attack. But the fighters weren't targeting the fleet. They swept past the warships and headed straight for the orbital infrastructure surrounding Krexmore Prime. Shipyards, repair stations, supply depots, communication arrays. Everything that kept the Dominion war machine running. "Target the support structures," Hajun called out. "Make them choose between chasing us and protecting their infrastructure." The Dominion fleet split, trying to defend both the planet and their ships. It was the first crack in their defensive strategy. Phase 2 hit while they were distracted. Engineer Sora led boarding teams that had been hidden in cargo containers, disguised as debris, and tucked into blind spots on captured Dominion ships. These teams used codes and access protocols stolen from previous battles. They infiltrated dozens of Dominion warships simultaneously. Once inside, they didn't try to capture the ships. They sabotaged them. They rewired weapons to fire on friendly vessels. They disabled shields. They overloaded reactors. Within minutes, chaos erupted throughout the Dominion fleet as ships began firing on each other, or suffering catastrophic system failures. "What is happening?" Emperor Krexthor demanded from his command center on the planet's surface. "Why are our ships attacking each other?" "The humans have infiltrated our vessels," an officer reported in panic. "They're everywhere. They're inside our network." Phase 3 was the most audacious. Commander Ji-hoon didn't attack at all. Instead, he broadcast a message directly to the populations of all Dominion-controlled worlds, bypassing military channels and using frequencies that reached civilian communication networks. "People of the Dominion Empire," his voice echoed across 1,000 worlds. "For 5,000 years you have been told that resistance is futile, that the Empire is eternal. That submission is the only path. Today we stand at your capital world with ships from 50 freed species. We are here because we refuse to believe those lies. We are here because freedom is worth fighting for. We are here because the age of empires is ending." On Dominion worlds, populations watched the battle unfold in real time. They saw the mighty home fleet struggling against a smaller force. They saw human tactics creating chaos from order. They saw that the Empire could bleed, could fail, could fall. Riots began on 70 worlds. Strikes paralyzed production on 200 more. The Empire's internal security forces found themselves fighting their own citizens, while the military was engaged at the homeworld. The Battle of Krexmore Prime lasted 12 hours. It was brutal, savage, and nothing like any battle fought in galactic history. The Dominion fleet had superior numbers and technology. The Free Worlds Alliance had desperation, creativity, and tactics that turned every advantage into a liability. Sergeant Hyun led ground forces that actually landed on Crexmoor Prime itself. It was considered impossible to breach the planetary defenses, but impossible was a word humans had stopped believing in. His troops used a combination of stealth insertions, captured transport codes, and sheer audacity to reach the surface. They didn't try to conquer the planet. They fought through to the Imperial District, creating a symbol. Humans could reach anywhere, no matter how well defended. When the battle finally ended, both sides had suffered terrible casualties. The Dominion had lost 4,000 ships. The Free Worlds Alliance had lost 800. By any military standard, it was a Pyrrhic victory at best. But the strategic impact was devastating for the Dominion. Fleet Commander Taeyang received a communication request from Emperor Crexthor himself. They met via hologram, two leaders who had fundamentally different views of the universe. "You have won nothing," Crexthor said, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. "My empire still controls thousands of worlds. I can rebuild this fleet in years. Can you rebuild it while fighting rebellions on 300 worlds?" Taeyang asked. "Can you maintain control when your own populations have seen you can be beaten? Can you hold together an empire when nobody believes in it anymore?" The Emperor was silent. "I'm not here to destroy the Dominion," Taeyang continued. "I'm here to offer you a choice. The same choice you offered Earth, but with better terms. Abdicate, dismantle the Empire, free the subjugated species, face trial for your crimes. In exchange, we end the bloodshed now. And if I refuse, then we keep fighting. And every species you've ever conquered will fight with us. Your empire will tear itself apart over the next decade. You'll die eventually, probably killed by your own people. Or you can end this with dignity and let the galaxy heal." Crexthor looked at the reports surrounding him. Rebellions everywhere, fleet in shambles, economy collapsing. He had ruled for 300 years, and in 1 year humanity had brought his empire to its knees. "I accept your terms," he said finally. "The Dominion is ended." The war was over. 3 years later, Commander Jihoon stood in the chambers of the Free Worlds Council, a new galactic government built on cooperation rather than domination. Representatives from 300 species worked together to solve problems that the Dominion had controlled through force. Engineer Sora ran the technology exchange program, teaching alien species the human approach to innovation. Question everything, experiment constantly, and never accept that something is impossible. Pilot Hajun commanded the Free World's defense fleet, a multi-species force trained in both conventional and unconventional warfare, dedicated to preventing any new empire from rising. Sergeant Hyun led the Peacekeeping Academy, teaching thousands of soldiers from hundreds of worlds how to prevent wars rather than just fight them. Scientist Yoonji had made an interesting discovery in the old Dominion archives. The Empire's founders had been freedom fighters themselves thousands of years ago. They had overthrown an earlier tyranny. Then gradually they had become tyrants themselves. The cycle was depressingly common in galactic history. "We have to make sure that doesn't happen to us," she told diplomat Nari. "Power corrupts. Even good intentions can lead to oppression. That's why we built checks and balances into the council," Nari replied. "That's why no single species controls the government. That's why we're teaching everyone to question authority. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't just military tactics. It's the idea that freedom requires eternal vigilance." Fleet Commander Taeyang retired to a small house overlooking what had been a battlefield on the Korean peninsula. Gardens grew where soldiers had died. Children played where tanks had fought. The scars were still visible, but life was returning. He received a visitor one day. Torvex, the former High Chancellor who had first threatened Earth. He was old now, serving his sentence by teaching at the academy about the mistakes the Dominion had made. "I thought your species would be consumed by revenge," Torvex said. "I thought you would become conquerors yourselves." "We thought about it," Taeyang admitted. "After everything you did to us, it would have been easy to hate, to want to dominate others the way you dominated us. But that would make us no different than the Dominion. Then what made humanity special? Why could you resist when 3,000 other species could not?" Taeyang thought about it for a long moment. "Maybe because we've never known anything but struggle. We spent 10,000 years fighting each other, fighting nature, fighting extinction. We learned that survival means adapting. We learned that the strong don't always win. We learned that determination matters more than technology. And we learned that freedom is worth any price. He looked at the gardens, at the children playing. But the real answer is simpler. We refused to give up. That's all. When you told us to kneel, we stood. When you told us resistance was futile, we resisted anyway. Not because we knew we would win, but because we couldn't live with ourselves if we didn't try. Torvex nodded slowly. The galaxy is still learning that lesson. Across 300 worlds, species that had lived under imperial rule for millennia were learning what it meant to be free. It was messy, complicated, and sometimes chaotic. Democracy was harder than tyranny, but it was better. Humanity's first-generation ships were preparing to launch, heading beyond known space to explore regions no species had ever mapped.